Hello, I'm Carl Seibert. Thanks for joining me. In this video, we're going to take a look at applying metadata, including the metadata that drives the new wonderfulness from Google Images, with Adobe Bridge. First, a bit of background. While it's always been important to mark up your images with metadata, now it's more important than ever, thanks to some very favorable things happening. First off, Google Images now supports, and has supported for a little while, several IPTC metadata fields. Here we're looking at a picture of Greta Thunberg doing something, and this is the Google Images preview page for this particular picture. And right here on the preview page, under the picture, we see that the creator of this picture is one Melissa Renwick. We can see that the copyright holder for this picture is the Canadian Press. And we also have the IPTC credit field here, which says AP. So these are three IPTC fields. Two of the three are fields that everybody should put on every picture they put out. Google has actually been supporting these fields for a couple of years. But just this spring, and I'm recording this video in the summer of 2020, Google moved the fields from a place that was hidden below a sort of an inconspicuous link to right up here in front. Right where you would expect to see the byline for the picture, you see a byline for the picture. This is really a fantastic change. And by the way, this field here, the credit field, is a tricky IPTC field. Most photographers probably don't even need to bother with it. What it is probably best explained by example. If you see a byline on a news picture, on a news site, on the internet, let's say it says Tyler Hicks, the New York Times. Okay, Tyler Hicks is the creator. His name goes in the creator field. Sometimes it's called the photographer field. The New York Times is the credit. Now, the credit properly refers to the agency or company that is responsible for the distribution of a picture, or perhaps responsible for the existence of the picture itself. It's not necessarily the same thing as whoever owns the picture. It's basically who you're working for. And if you're working for yourself, if you're making pictures for stock or whatever, you probably don't need to worry about it unless a client tells you to. And it's not even an immutable thing over the life of an image. Here in this particular case, we can see that this picture was distributed by the Associated Press, came from an NBC News page. NBC News is a member of the AP. The copyright holder of the picture is the Canadian Press. AP got the picture from CP through a content sharing arrangement. And by the way, in the copyright field right here, on your own picture, you could very easily put a little rudimentary contact information right in here. Your phone number, URL of your website, something like that. Nothing fancy, but it can go right there and it can be right on this front page in Google Images. So if an honest person happens on this picture, they might have contact information right there at their fingertips. I think that is a great opportunity, and I kind of highly recommend that. And by the way, there is no legally mandated form for a copyright notice. There used to be, way back in the day, prior to 1989. But that's just not a thing that we need to worry about anymore. But wait, there's more. Google is in the process of introducing a new feature in Google Images. This one is called Licensable. Now, the licensable feature, as I record this, is still in beta. We don't know exactly what it's going to look like in the real world. But the crux of it is that there's a badge on these thumbnails. This is a Google Images handout picture of what they anticipate the feature is going to look like. So there's a badge here that says Licensable, and you can click through this badge, or you can click on the links that are associated with it on the preview page, and it will take you directly to the photographer or the licensor, a person that you can buy a license from. And again, if you're an honest person and you come on this picture in Google Images, the licensable feature can hook you up with a person from whom you can buy a license. And that is another tremendous advancement. That's what all this metadata stuff is about, is empowering honest people to do honest stuff. And so this is a great thing. You don't have to have a licensable badge. If you want a licensable badge, it's very easy to get. All you have to do is fill out a couple of fields properly in your IPTC metadata. And better than that, they're templated fields. You don't even have to fuss with it on a per image basis. That is a really great thing. So let's pop over to Adobe Bridge and see what we can do about actually marking up some pictures. Here we are in Adobe Bridge. Now, Adobe Bridge itself is kind of an interesting case. Adobe itself, in the person of the always wonderful Julianne Cost, explains that Adobe Bridge was designed to be an intermediary file browser to basically connect the various Adobe Graphic Arts programs. Thus, the name Adobe Bridge. Now, that said, a file browser as the front end, Adobe Photoshop as the back end workflow is a legitimate and popular workflow. Thousands or tens of thousands of professional photographers have used that workflow for decades. Thing is, the file browser on the front end is Photomechanic in almost every case, not Adobe Bridge. So we're not dealing with a program that has functionality that's designed for our needs here. That said, we can get it to work just fine. Disclaimer number 2 about Adobe Bridge is that I very rarely venture into this program unless a reader or a viewer has asked me something specific about Bridge that I need to figure out, or, as often the case, a reader or a viewer has very kindly informed me about something that I should know about Adobe Bridge and don't. All that said, let's go ahead and apply some metadata to these pictures. We have here a folder of miscellaneous garden images that we've used as test images a couple of times before. In other file browser programs, tasks that you might accomplish by just calling some functionality. In Bridge, you shift workspaces to do them. There's nothing really wrong with that, it's just a little different. So, in this case, we're going to pop over to the Metadata Workspace. This is Metadata 1, it's my slight modification of the default Metadata Workspace that ships with Bridge. So, in this view, we have a thumbnail grid, and over here in the left rail, we have a listing of metadata fields. And they're grouped, and we can open the groups up and close them. And we have the IPTC core group open right now. The IPTC core means the IPTC core schema. And these are the metadata fields that we use most often and that are supported in most programs. So the first step in applying metadata to some pictures is to use a template that contains all of our standing metadata, all the stuff that doesn't change. Our name, our contact information, our copyright statement, stuff like that. And we will apply that first, and then we'll go back and actually caption our pictures. Now, the concept of using a template is maybe the most important thing that I can tell you about marking up pictures. Not only does it save an immense amount of time, it works. Human beings are not very good at being rubber stamps and typing the same thing over and over and over again, tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of times, and always being consistent. And consistency is what you need in a business like this. So, we use a template, for sure, every time. And the Google good news here is that the fields that we need to fill out properly to get all that Google goodness are included in our template. So, okay, we'll just let it rip here. We'll select all these pictures, and I'll deselect a few that we'll come back to later. And there's kind of a reason for this. And so we'll take all these pictures that we've selected, we'll jump up to our Adobe Bridge Tools section in the main menu, and come down here to Replace Metadata. We have two options. We can append metadata and replace metadata. Append metadata is kind of interesting, but what we want to do here is we want to use replace metadata. Replace metadata will simply write whatever is in our template onto our target pictures. Simple as that. That's what we want to do. Okay, so I've done that, and we can see here, if we look in the left rail at our metadata fields, that indeed we have metadata in these pictures. I'll click off, click back on, click from picture to picture, and you can see that we have consistently applied our templated metadata to all these pictures. And we'll come back in a couple of minutes to what is in the template and how to work with the template. So now to step 2. We're already good to go as far as Google is concerned. And mostly, there are pictures, we need to be able to find them. And that's what metadata does for us. So here we go. Let's apply some captions to these pictures. So we'll start out here at the top left corner with this picture of this orange flower. And the first thing we notice about this picture straight off is that there are 2 of them. This one is the camera raw file, and this one is an exported JPEG with edits. So they need the same caption. Let's caption both of these guys at once. We'll just select both of them. And then we can go back into the left rail, into this list of metadata fields, and we can go here to the description. Description, caption, it's the same thing. You can call it either one. And in this little box here, we can go ahead and we can type a caption. So this thing is an orange double hibiscus, I think. Okay, so we will type that in. And we can see here, by the way, in our description field, that our template already put Joe Photographer's inline byline right there in the field, ready to go. And because, of course, it was me, I can't seem to type a 3-word caption while I'm talking without making at least 2 typos. So we'll figure that out. And, well, whatever. Let's call it 3 typos. We'll go for a record. Alrighty. Now, as soon as I click off that picture, I'll get this confirmation dialog. Do I want to apply the changes? Why, yes, I do. And so that's the captioning step. We go through each of our pictures and we simply write down what's in them. And while we're at it, maybe we should add some keywords to this photo as well. Keywords are just search terms that aren't necessarily in your caption. And sometimes they can characterize a picture or categorize a picture. Keywording is actually a pretty complicated subject, and there are some videos on this channel about keywording, some posts on my blog. But we'll just add some keywords to these pictures and move on. We're not really doing good captions and good keywords here. We're just kind of pretending. So let's say that flowers might be a nice keyword. So I'll type flowers, comma and a space, and this is a plant. So we'll put plants down as a keyword as well. Same deal. Click off the picture, get the dialog box, move on to the next picture. We could be working on 1 picture at a time here, or we could be working on a dozen pictures at a time here. But typing a caption in this tiny little field isn't a terribly pleasant experience. It's kind of like writing a blog post on a strip of masking tape. Is there a better way? Yes, there is indeed a better way. There's basically 2 completely separate approaches available in Adobe Bridge for captioning pictures. One is typing in the little fields at the left, which mostly strike me as being there for reading metadata. The other method, on the other hand, is to use the File Info dialog. So let's select a couple of other pictures. We'll select this pair of pictures here. And we can go up to File in the main menu and come down to File Info, which we could also open with the Command I keystroke or Control I keystroke, depending on what platform we're on. And the File Info dialog opens up. If you watch my video with working on metadata in Adobe Photoshop, this thing should look really familiar. That's because it's the same dialog that appears in Adobe Photoshop. It's probably the very same piece of code. Most metadata functionality seems to be common between Adobe Bridge and Adobe Photoshop. That's not the case with Adobe Lightroom, which seems to work completely differently. This dialog, while itself is not the easiest to use metadata dialog we've ever seen, it's not too bad. It's a heck of a lot better than trying to write our metadata in that teeny-weeny little thing in the left rail. This dialog is tabbed. It's open right now to the IPTC tab, which corresponds with the IPTC core group expanded in the left rail in Adobe Bridge. We have some other tabs available to us, including this tab, which is titled Basic. And what we've got here is just a different view. This tab opens up and it's simplified. And we have here our description field, and we have our keywords field, and we have a copyright field. That's going to be pretty cool. At the moment, there's nothing showing in this dialog at all. So let's load a template. If we come down here to the bottom, there's a templates flyout, and we can load the same template that we loaded before. Now we have confirmation dialog that has options. So let's see what we've got here. Basically, there's 3 options. We can clear existing properties and replace with template properties. That's going to be the same as the replace option from the Bridge main menu. We can keep original metadata, but replace matching properties from the template. That's an interesting and pretty powerful option. What that will do is it will take any field that exists in the template and it will overwrite that field in the target. If you've got existing metadata in the target and you have an active field in the template metadata will replace the target metadata. But fields that aren't active in the template will be skipped over and the existing metadata will be left in place. Option 3 is simply to append all the metadata that's in our template to existing metadata. Now, there are some advanced cases where we can use these options and accomplish some pretty cool stuff. But for the time being, all we want to do is the simple thing. We just want to write the information that's in our template to these pictures. I hit OK, bang, and you can see in my dialog here that we've loaded the dialog with this information. We haven't written it to the pictures yet, but when we OK, and we'll probably get a confirmation dialog again, it'll go ahead and write to the pictures. So at this point, using this dialog, we've arrived at that same place where we're good to go for Google, we're good to go for all our standing information, and all we've got to do is add our captions and keywords and whatever else it is that we really need to do. In this case, we can go back and we can go ahead and use this basic tab because it's a pretty nice place to work. We have these 2 pictures selected. This is once again a pair, a camera raw file, and an edited JPEG version. And we can just go ahead and write a caption. And what is this? This is a desert rose of some sort. And once again, we can add some keywords if we want to. We can say this is in the garden. We can, that's a flower again. So we can do flowers and we'll just separate them with a comma and a space, which is industry standard. And if Adobe doesn't like it, Adobe will change it into something else. So we OK? Fine. And we have now added that metadata to these photos. And we can see it over here, or we can hit Command-I, and we can see it in here. And yes, indeed, this particular copy of Adobe Bridge is configured to use a semicolon to delimit keywords rather than a comma. That's okay. We don't mind. Now you'll notice that in this particular case, we actually did these 2 pictures from start to finish in one sort of 2-step process. And that's perfectly fine. You can do your template over a whole bunch of pictures at once and then go back and caption, or you can go to 1 picture at a time or 2 pictures at a time and do the whole process from top to bottom right on those pictures. And that's just how easy it is to apply metadata to your pictures. Cool. All right, so let's go back and let's take a look at this template thing. Now, this template that we're using here today is our Joe Photographer demo template. And on this channel, we have 2 imaginary photographers, Joe and Susie Photographer. They're brother and sister. They own a business together. And, hey, they don't exist. We have this demo information from them, but these demo templates can be used as starters to make your own templates. And indeed, there will be a link in the description down below. And you can download them, open them up, and edit them to suit your own taste, and save them as your own templates. So let's see what's in here. Well, we have Joe Photographer's name in the creator field, often called the photographer field. Well, it's pretty obvious and perhaps the most very basic thing to do, and that's one of those 3 fields that Google Images is going to expose right there under your picture. So already we're a third of the way home for that particular feature in Google Images. Moving down the template, in this particular display, there's nothing to say that the fields have to be displayed in this order, and in some programs, indeed, you can change the order of the field display. So we move down, Here we've got some contact information for Joe. We have Joe's physical address, we have Joe's office phone number, we have Joe's email, and we have the URL of Joe's website. Many photographers do it just this way. They conscientiously fill out all of this contact information, reasoning that anybody who uses this metadata might well be using it to get in touch with them, to do business with them, and they want to make it absolutely as easy as possible. All that said, some of us might not be comfortable with using certain parts of this information in this way. I personally don't want to be spammed, so I don't put my email in my templates. I usually put my business phone number there, and I always put my web URL. It's completely up to you, season to taste. You don't have to use all of those fields. Moving down here, we have a group of fields that are about where the picture was shot. A city, state, country sort of thing. Many people pre-fill the country and their state or province or whatever you have in your country. And some people even pre-fill the city here if they shoot mostly in the same city and just change it out on an as-needed basis. And this placeholder type in this particular template, which you can feel free to remove. Moving down again, we have our description or our caption field. And in the template, it's already filled in with Joe Photographer's inline byline. Unless you're working for a client who doesn't like them, I highly recommend inline bylines. It's worth noting that in many cases, the caption or description is going to be the only piece of metadata that a given user might see about your photos, and you want to do as much there as you possibly can. You might want to put keywords in a template, or maybe not. Well, hey, let's go over here. Let's cancel this. Let's move over here. And we'll open this template up cleanly so that we don't have to work around information about a particular picture that might already be there. So here we slide back down again, and we can see in our template, we have Joe Photographer's inline byline. And the keywords field is blank. But you might want to make a template for specific uses that might even have some keywords going in. This starter template has Joe Photographer's initials in the description writer field. There's a field for special instructions. Many people put standing information in that field. And here we have the credit line field. In this particular template, Joe has a value in the credit line field. He has the name of the studio that he owns with Susie. Most of us, most of the time, probably don't even want to bother with this field. We can leave it blank. But when we looked at the Google Images example, we can see that if we do put a value in this field, Google Images will display it right under our picture. Now we have a big one. This is important for everybody. Google Images does, in fact, display this field. And this is a piece of information that's pretty darn critical. It's Joe's copyright notice. And here it is. Joe just has the copyright symbol, and it says copyright, and there's a year. And we'll note here that the year is 2018 in the template, and that's not right. You're going to have to change that. And of course, put in your own name. And Joe has followed my advice, and he's included some rudimentary contact information right here in the copyright notice. Since Joe doesn't really exist, I did this. It's pretty logical that he might follow my advice. Okay, cool. So at this point, we've got those three fields that are up front in Google Images taken care of. Now, what about the Google Licensable badge? Okay, the Google Licensable badge is driven by three fields of its own. One of those fields is the copyright URL field, which in most programs would be right here next to the copyright notice. But Adobe hasn't chosen to do that. The copyright URL field in this dialog is here on this basic tab. Why? Who knows? But the truth of the matter is, who cares? Because all we have to do is get it filled out on our template, and we never have to worry about it again. The copyright URL field is officially called the Web Statement of Rights field. And the information in that field really basically only needs to take a visitor to someplace where they can get in touch with you and find out about rights, find out about a license. So here in Joe's case, if a visitor follows this link, he's going to go to this page. He's going to go to a landing page on Joe's website called Licenses. And the form of this URL is important too. This is the field that will actually drive the existence of your licensable badge. According to Google's documentation, the URL in this field has to be a complete, fully qualified URL, including the protocol, HTTP or HTTPS, and the colon and the slashes and all of that. And if indeed your website's address has it, the www dot at the beginning. Some websites have that, some websites don't have that. So let's take a look at this landing page business. Some people are under the impression that the web statement of rights field has to be a sort of a detailed recitation of exactly what licenses or rights are available for that particular image. Well, no, it really doesn't. We can't do that anyway because it's unknowable. You have no idea when you first mark up a picture what rights might be available for that picture years later when somebody comes to your website. So my advice is don't stress about it. I made this very simple landing page on my website. I mean, seriously, we're talking about only a few minutes of work here. And it just says, all rights reserved. 99% of the time, if you find a picture of mine on the internet, it's going to be all rights reserved, so that's completely correct. In the few cases where it's not, if you get in touch with me, if you're interested in a license, of course, I'll tell you what the deal is for that particular picture. So, no problem. I have a contact link, and this is just the normal contact link that's on every page on my website. And if that doesn't work for you, I have my business phone number. A few of my pictures are licensed under Creative Commons, and I have a separate website for that. And then I just have a paragraph that thanks any visitor who came to my site this way for their interest and their honesty in contacting me about a license. I'm very sincere about that. This is what we're striving for with all this work. So if somebody contacts me on this page about a picture, a number of things could happen. I could tell them to go talk to the very nice people at my agent about a license. Maybe it's a picture where I can sell them a license. Maybe it's a picture that's been bought out. Nobody can sell them a license. And honestly, folks, if somebody's honest enough to call me up and ask to use a picture, and they're not going to use it in a commercial way, it's entirely possible that I might just give them a license for free right then and there. So that's how the web URL field works. And that's how you get your licensable badge. Now, there was another deeper feature associated with a licensable badge, which is really intended for stock agencies and people like that. It's specific to the picture. The intention is to take somebody to an e-commerce page where they can buy that particular picture right then and there. Well, most of us don't have that, but what the heck? If somebody wants to talk to us about buying a license from us, we want to make it as easy as possible. We want all roads to lead to us, and we can use those features to send us to this very same landing page. So let's see how we go about doing that. If we move over here to the IPTC Extension tab in this dialog, the fields that we need to make this operate, and we just need to put values in a couple of more fields, and we'll be fine, are in the extension. These are actually plus fields. Plus is a standard all about licensing for photos. So if we scroll down towards the bottom here, we find a field called licensor. This field is actually an array, so we'll double click it and it will open up. And here we have the licensor subfields. It's basically just contact information. We'll put our name in it, the licensor name, which could be our name, it could be a company name, it could be an agency name, whatever it might be. And down here at the bottom, we have the licensor web address, which again could be our web address. It could be a landing page, like we've seen for Joe Photographer. It could just be your home page. People are going to be able to figure it out. It's no problem. And of course, it could be that particular page, like an e-commerce page, for that particular picture. And again, it could be on our website. It could be on our agent's website. It could be anything we want it to be. And the rest of this array is just contact information. And we can see here that Joe has put his phone number in here. Why not? Doesn't hurt. And once we've done that, we've made the licensable badge operate to its full potential. Now, there is another way of doing this. The licensable feature can be driven by structured markup on a website. That's something that we probably don't have to worry about. That would be the kind of thing that a web developer would build in if they're making an automated site of some sort. So, open up Joe's template, use this dialog to change the values to what you want your own template to be, and then come back down to the bottom to the flyout and simply choose Export. If you hit Export, and we'll just pretend that we've changed this template to meet our own needs, Adobe will open up a Save dialog, and you can assign it a name and save it, and it will automatically save into a metadata templates folder that's shared between all the Adobe programs. So that's pretty cool, and we'll just actually cancel out of that. Alternatively, we can open the template folder from this same dialog right here, and the template folder opens up, and we can use our operating system's file manager to move templates back and forth. And templates in Adobe Bridge and Adobe Photoshop can be saved as XMP files and exchanged between programs, exchanged between users. Now, it's a little more complicated than this in Adobe Bridge, because we could also edit our template using Bridge's dialog and Bridge's functionality. And if we pop up here in the Tools menu again, we can do Create Metadata Template. Here we have Bridge's Template Editor dialog, which is a little different. Now, there is a problem. We would start out in both cases by loading Joe's template. And in the Shared Metadata dialog, that's pretty easy. You just hit Import. You navigate to wherever you expanded the zip file that you downloaded from my site. You choose the appropriate Joe Photographer XMP file, and there are two in the zip file. One includes the extended fields that drive the licensable badge, and one doesn't. And you edit and you go. That's fine. In this dialog, sure enough, there's a load function that should work the same way. And I swear the last time I wrote about Adobe Bridge, which is about 4 years ago, I think that this thing worked. I could not make it work when I was preparing for this particular video. So if you want to load a starter template in this dialog, you'll have to go another way. In the download, there are also two template files that are JPEGs, and you can use JPEG template files to exchange templates between most all programs. In order to make this dialog work in Adobe Bridge, we're going to have to go that way. So let's see how this is going to work. Let's clear this dialog. We'll pop over here in Bridge to a new window, and here we see the JPEG files that are included in the zip file that you can download. And this one is Joe's template with the licensor's information. So if I go ahead and select that, then go back to Create Metadata Template. Glory be, we've loaded the dialog with the values from Joe's template. All we have to do is turn on the fields, edit to taste, and we'll have our own template. Now, by default, all of the different groups of metadata fields, at least the ones that we've chosen in our preferences to reveal in the interface, are in fact open. So let's tidy this up a little bit. We have the IPTC IIM legacy stanza here. That's going to be interesting to us in a minute, because we're going to have to go into preferences and make sure that something is right there if we're going to make our licensable badge work. But let's just close it for the time being, and we'll reveal the IPTC core section. Same thing that we have revealed over here. And we'll just turn on all the fields in the core. Now, if you want a field to be turned off, remember I told you that business about how if a field is inactive in your template, you can make it skip over that field in a photo that already has metadata. Alternatively, if the field is active in the template but empty, it won't skip that field if it encounters existing metadata in a picture. Rather, it will clear the field, so you can blank existing fields. That's a choice that's up to you in terms of how you want your template to work. And that choice is only available to you if you create your template here in this dialog. Anyhow, we'll go through this, and we would simply change all of this information to match whatever we want in our template, and then we can go ahead and save it. But we want some information that is in some other sections of the metadata. So we'll go ahead and close IPTC core. We'll look at IPTC extension. We'll scroll down here, and here we have our licensor array, and it's already open. And we can just change Joe Photographer's information to our own information. And of course, we can turn these fields on MOS, or if we want to, we can just turn on our licensor array. Now, what about that web statement of rights field, that copyright URL field, you ask? You didn't see me turn that on. That's because, weirdly, it's up here. It's in the IPTC IIM legacy section. All the fields that you see in this section are just duplicates of the same field in the regular IPTC section here in Adobe Bridge, except for this one. The copyright info URL field is here. It's in this section, and we'll have to turn it on and, of course, edit it to our own needs. If indeed you want the licensable badge, you can turn it off if you don't. Now, what's strange about this, and this is kind of technical inside baseball, but your IPTC metadata is written to two different data blocks in your picture, in your JPEG file or TIFF file or PSD file, an embeddable file. The first data block, IIM, the Information Interchange Model data block, is very old. It was developed by the IPTC in 1990, and it contains what were basically the core schema fields in 1990. And on the one hand, it's very efficient. On the other hand, it's not accessible. And it's still there, even though most of our metadata nowadays is carried in the XMP data block, as in XMP file. But we have to write to both of them for backwards compatibility for many programs, perhaps most programs, that look into the IIM data block for their metadata instead of the XMP data block. And yes, that means that XMP only fields, all the extended fields, and a bunch of other XMP fields don't appear for those programs, including this one. Copyright info URL is not in the IIM data block. It's only in the XMP data block. Technically speaking, it's not even in the IPTC core schema. So why is this field in this section of the Adobe Bridge interface? Nobody knows. Once again, as long as we know that it's there and we edit it to be what we want it to be, we'll never have to mess with it again because it's part of the template, and that's all we really need to know. When you have this edited, you have the template as you want it. Just give it a name. My template will do. And go ahead and save it. Do you want to replace that template? Sure, why not? Now it'll be there in your templates, and now if you go to Tools and you go to Replace Metadata and you get this flyout list, your template that you just saved will be here. If you save the template using the other dialog, using the shared dialog with Photoshop, it will not appear in this list. So if you intend to apply metadata this way from the main menus, Tools, Replace Metadata, you need to build your template this way. Now, conceivably, you could transfer the template from one dialog to the other simply by saving it onto a JPEG, reopening it in this dialog, and moving on from there. An unnecessary piece of complication, so it's there. You're forewarned, and you can use the program accordingly. But there's one more aspect to this, in my opinion, unnecessary piece of complication, and that is making the fields show in the first place. For this, we go to Adobe Bridge's Preferences. And in Preferences, we have a metadata pane. And we have a list of all the different metadata fields. And all you have to do in here is make sure the copyright info URL is turned on in this IPTC IIM legacy section. What you do in this dialog will drive what you see over here. I'll go ahead and cancel the dialog. What you do in that dialog will drive what you see over here in this left rail. If you want to simplify what you see in the left rail, let's say, for sake of example, that you never want to use the sublocation field and you just want to save the space and don't have to look at it, you can turn it off in that Preferences dialog. So that little bit is actually pretty cool. Let's pop back over to our demo pictures. And there's one more thing that I suppose I should point out about working with metadata in Adobe Bridge, and that is that you might want to look at a picture in a little more detail when you're captioning it. That's particularly true if it's a picture of people or something like that. So let's take this dragonfly as an example. If I hit the space bar in Bridge, my picture will open full frame. Hit the space bar again, and I'm back into the grid view. But with the picture open full frame, I can't access its metadata because I can't see the left rail and I can't open the shared dialog. In that particular case, we can use the Workspaces feature. Pop over to the Preview Workspace. Here we have the picture open large, and again, this is the Preview Workspace as it ships with Adobe Bridge, with just some tiny little modifications. I think I changed the size of the left rail or something like that. But this particular one, I've called it Preview 1. It's just Preview when it ships with Bridge. Looks just about like this. It's a vertical film strip and a big preview over here. And what do you know? If I hit Command-I, here's my shared metadata dialog. So if I want to know exactly what sort of dragonfly this is, or if I want to recognize a human being in a group picture, I can work on metadata with a big preview by using this workspace. So we'll go back to our other workspace, and that's it. There you have it. There is working with metadata in Adobe Bridge. Now again, I'm not a big Bridge expert. If you know a better way, or if I've missed something, please jump in the comments down below, jump in the comments on my blog, or use the contact page, or reach out on social media, or whatever, and let me know. Most of what I do know about Adobe Bridge has come from readers and viewers like you. As I record this video, in the summer of 2020, we have an epidemic going on. Please, folks, be careful, stay safe out there, and until next time, mind your metadata.